It is killing people and devastating communities. Around the world, we see not only accelerating temperatures, we see an acceleration in sea levels rising, glaciers receding, deadly diseases spreading, the extinction of species and cities under threat. And this is only the beginning. We have just survived the hottest days, the hottest months, and the hottest summer on the books. Behind every broken record are broken economies, broken lives, and whole nations at the breaking point. Every continent, every region, and every country is feeling the heat. But I'm not sure all leaders are feeling that heat. Actions are failing abysmally short. There is still time to keep rising temperatures within the 1.5 degree limits of the Paris Agreement, but that requires drastic steps now to cut greenhouse gas emissions and to ensure climate justice for those who did least to cause the crisis but are paying the highest price. We have the receipts. G20 countries are responsible for 80% of greenhouse emissions. They must lead. They must break their addiction to fossil fuels, stop new coal, and indeed the International Energy Agency's findings that new oil and gas licensing by them is incompatible with keeping the 1.5 degree limit alive. To stand a fighting chance of limiting global temperature rise, we must phase out coal, oil and gas in a fair and equitable way and massively boost renewables. This is the only path to affordable, renewable energy for all. And unfortunately, many in Africa, still lack electricity. So the fossil fuel age has failed. If fossil fuel companies want to be part of the solution, they must lead the transition to renewable energy. No more dirty production. No more fake solutions. No more bankrolling climate denial. I have laid out a climate solidarity pact in which all big emitters are asked to make extra efforts to cut emissions, and wealthier countries support emerging economies with finance and technology to do so. For example, Africa has 60% of the world's solar capacity, but just 2% of renewable investments. And I've also put forward an acceleration agenda to supercharge these efforts. Developed countries must reach net zero as close as possible to 2040, and emerging economies as close as possible to 2050, in line with common but differentiated responsibilities. And immediate steps include an end to coal by 2030 for OECD countries and 2040 for the rest of the world. An end to fossil fuel subsidies and the price on carbon. Developed countries must also finally deliver the $100 billion for developing country climate action as promised, double adaptation finance by 2025 as promised, and replenish the Green Climate Fund as promised. And all countries must work to operationalize the Loss and Damage Fund this year and ensure universal early warning coverage by 2027. Tomorrow, I will welcome credible first movers and doers to our Climate Ambition Summit. And COP28 is around the corner. Climate chaos is breaking new records, but we cannot afford the same old broken record of scapegoating and waiting for others to move first. And to all those working, marching, and championing real climate action, I want you to know that you are on the right side of history and that I am with you. I won't give up this fight of our lives. Excellence.
Excellencies.
Nous devons...
We must also be determined to honour the Charter's commitment to fundamental human rights. Just 4 women signed our founding document. One look around this room shows that not enough has changed. We the peoples does not mean we the men. Women are still waiting for equal opportunities and equal pay. women are still waiting for equal opportunities and equal pay, for equality under the law, for their work to be valued and their opinions to count. Around the globe, women's rights, including sexual and reproductive rights, are being suppressed and even rolled back, and women's freedoms curtailed. In some countries, women and girls are punished for wearing too many clothes. In others, for wearing too few. Thanks to generations of women's rights activists, times are changing. From sports field to schools and public squares, girls and women are challenging the patriarchy and winning. I stand with them. I entered this office with a commitment to ensure gender parity at the UN. We have achieved that at senior levels and are on track to do so across the UN system. Because gender equality is not the problem. Gender equality is the solution. It is not a favour to women. It is a fundamental condition to ensuring a better future for all. Excellencies, we must be determined to answer the call to action, to put human rights at the heart of our work. 75 years after the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, there has been enormous progress in some areas, from ending colonization and segregation to ensuring women's voting rights. But we have not achieved basic rights for all, when 1.2 billion people still live in acute poverty and hunger is at levels not seen since 2005. When discrimination on racial and ethnic grounds is perfectly legal in many countries. When people must risk death to seek a better life. When refugees, migrants, and minorities are routinely demonized and hounded. When declaring your gender identity or simply who you love can lead to imprisonment or even execution. When speaking out can lead to perilous consequences. Human rights, political, civil, economic, social, and cultural, are the key to solving many of the world's interlinked problems. Laws to protect the vulnerable must be enacted and enforced. The targeting of minorities must stop, and human rights and human dignity must be at the centre of social, economic, and migration policies. All governments must fulfil the commitment they made in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Excelências.
Excellencies, we must also face up to the looming threats posed to human rights by new technologies. Generative artificial intelligence holds much promise, but it may also lead us across a route and into more danger than we can control. When I mentioned artificial intelligence in my General Assembly speech in 2017, only 2 other leaders even uttered the term. Now AI is on everyone's lips, a subject of both awe and fear. Even some of those who developed generative AI are calling for greater regulation. But many of the dangers of digital technology are not looming on the horizon, they are here. The digital divide is inflaming inequalities. Hate speech, disinformation, and conspiracy theories on social media platforms are spread and amplified by AI, undermining democracy and fueling violence and conflict in real life. Online surveillance and data harvesting are enabling human rights abuses on a mass scale. And technology companies and governments are far from finding solutions.
We must move fast and mend things. New technologies require new innovative forms of governance, with input from experts building this technology and from those monitoring its abuses. And we urgently need a global digital compact between governments, regional organizations, the private sector and civil society to mitigate the risks of digital technologies and identify ways to harness their benefits for the good of humanity. Some have called for consideration of a new global entity on AI that could provide a source of information and expertise for member states. There are many different models, inspired by such examples as the International Atomic Energy Agency, the International Civil Aviation Organization, or the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And the UN stands ready to host the global and inclusive discussions that are needed, depending on the decisions of member states. To help advance the search for concrete governance solutions, I will appoint this month a high-level advisory body on artificial intelligence, which will provide recommendations by the end of this year. And next year's Summit of the Future is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for progress to deal with these new threats in line with the vision of the UN Charter. Member States will decide how to move forward on the new agenda for peace, the Global Digital Compact, reforms to the international financial architecture, and many other proposals to address challenges and bring greater justice and equity to global governance. Excellencies, the United Nations was created precisely for moments like these, moments of maximum danger and minimum agreement. We can and must use our tools in flexible and creative ways. Last month, we saw the dividends of determination off the coast of Yemen. Carrying 1 million barrels of oil, the decaying FSO Safar supertanker was a ticking time bomb, a looming ecological disaster in the Red Sea. But no one offered to solve the problem. So the United Nations stepped in and brought the world together. We mobilized resources, assembled the experts, navigated difficult negotiations and built trust. We have more work ahead and more resources are needed. But last month, the oil was successfully transferred from the Safar. This UN-led action saved the Red Sea. When no one else could or would, UN determination got the job done. Despite our long list of global challenges, that same spirit of determination can guide us forward. Let us be determined to heal divisions and forge peace, determined to uphold the dignity and worth of every person, determined to realize the Sustainable Development Goals and effectively leave no one behind, determined to reform multilateralism for the 21st century and come together for the common good. And I thank you.
I thank the Secretary General. The Assembly will now turn to Agenda Item 8, entitled General Debate. Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Mr. Secretary General of the United Nations, Honorable Ministers, distinguished delegates, and all stakeholders here present. Good morning. It is my honor and privilege as President of the United Nations General Assembly to welcome you to this hall for the opening of the General Debate of the 78th session. Allow me to acknowledge in our midst today several presidents, former presidents of the General Assembly, including His Excellency Han Sang-soo, former Prime Minister of Korea, who served as President of the 56th session of the Assembly, and who now sits as Chair of the UN Council of Former Presidents of the General Assembly. Together, this Assembly Hall and this rostrum stand as a living testament to multilateralism and to the extraordinary role and compelling influence of the United Nations over the 75 years of its existence. It is a unique and a truly global platform for debate, dialogue, and problem solving through multilateral diplomacy.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was live broadcasting from New York as the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres was addressing the inaugural session of the UN General Assembly in New York. The Secretary General Antonio Guterres have been speaking about the benefit for all people of the humanity through action, not only through words. This is the 78th session of the UN. Also, the UN chief have focused his word on women